And hello once again, my name is Lupus, and today I'm going to be talking about narrative healing. Before we get into that, if you enjoy these videos or if you find them helpful or anything like that and you want to support me, only if you want to, you can check out my books or my Patreon, both of which are in the description. So let's get on to narrative healing. We'll talk about that stuff a bit later. So first of all, what is narrative healing? Basically, this is a concept, so it's like healing through narrative and stuff like that. It's also not necessarily narrative therapy, which is also its own thing, but I suppose that they could be seen as related to one another. This is more something that I did in my honors, and I figured it could be nice to just do a little primer on it, just as this is going to be a short little video. It's not going to be very academic. It's mostly going to be sort of how you could possibly conceptualize yourself and others through the sort of narrative healing dynamic. So firstly, the primary thing to do is to see life as a narrative. Now, I would say, also in terms of, say, like narrative therapy, which has like similarities, there are obviously problems with this. You can't just say, oh, life is definitely like a narrative, because narrative is a man-made construct. It is very specific in and of itself. However, it can be a useful way to conceptualize the world for yourself. Just don't see it as, scientific rationality. This is just a way of conceptualizing things for yourself to better understand them, essentially for you, etc. So, see life as a narrative. So basically conceptualize life through narratological means. So, see things as you would see a narrative, right? Time, character, focalization, and structure. Okay, because it's often also in retrospect, but we'll talk about that. So, essentially, character. Think about yourself as a subject and other people as objects, narrative objects, not like physical objects, and also the unconscious, right? So in your mind, you have many unconscious thoughts and feelings and ideas. This is sort of related to psychology, with its basis in Freudian psychology, and I have made there are videos and stuff on here as well that talk about Freudian psychology and everything. So essentially, understanding yourself can be a difficult thing to do, but if you try to conceptualize it through a narrative lens, you could help to understand yourself and your own unconscious thoughts and feelings and ideas by seeing yourself or others as subjects and yourself or others as objects. So basically, we all live a subjective life. We live as ourselves, right? And other people are external to us. However, if you can conceptualize yourself and think of yourself as a main character and other people as having lives that cross with yours, you can sort of see it as a way of understanding the world. This will be obviously from a very self-centered perspective. However, you could also project it outwards. You could make yourself an object in someone else's story. How is your life an object to someone else, right? So obviously to me, the person that I am in love with is the person I love. That she's an object of my affections and my love. However, if I was to conceptualize life from her perspective, she would see me in the same way. But how would she see me in a different way? How am I to other people, and how are other people to me in terms of sort of characters? And how are people sort of flat or round characters in my life, right? When you think of like most teachers, a teacher that you've had is mostly just a flat character to you because, well, their entire purpose in your life was to just be your teacher. But obviously, they did have their own inner life. But it can be useful to try to conceptualize them as round characters or flat characters, depending. Now, you can also look at things like time, right? Time for a human does move in a linear capacity, unlike in a story in which you can move things around. However, the human mind does also work in ways that lend itself to retrospective thought, so memory, right? When you are living your life and you constantly, most of the things that you experience in your life, you actually filter out. You do not remember the vast majority of things. If I was to tell you or ask you, what was the very first thing that you saw? What was the very first object that you saw when you woke up 13 days ago? You wouldn't be able to answer me, because most of the things you won't be able to actually remember. It's only when things stand out in some way that they're important. Your mind filters out most of the stuff, because most things are not necessarily important. So the things that you choose to fixate on, that your mind fixates on, can be seen like flashbacks in a story, right? Looking back in time, or also how your mind often goes forward in time. Not literally, but in terms of thinking about what you want to do, what your aspirations are, what your goals are. You can see yourself as living a story, and those possible futures are things that could be potentially correct. It could happen. It also might not happen. So it's good to see it in both senses, and to look back at your own life and how you could also be an unreliable narrator in your own life. You could be looking back in time, looking at your life, and misremember things. And understanding that you could misremember things could help you to analyze and interpret your own thoughts and feelings right now. So that can be helpful. Focalization, which is also a narratological term, which is basically how a story is framed and who is the person that is basically perceiving the events that are happening, right? So who is the person that is seeing, which is different to the narrator, but you can, for the purpose of this, let's conflate the two. So who is narrating the story, right? Who is seeing and telling the story of our lives? It's not necessarily us, right? Or it could be. In your own mind, obviously you're hearing your own thoughts, so it's kind of like a stream of consciousness narrative that is occurring, but you could also try to see things outside that perspective. Because here's one of the problems. Human beings are actually really bad at understanding themselves by themselves. So you know you to in a personal extent from your own perspective. However, you don't know you how other people know you. You don't necessarily know how other people see you. So what if you mentally try to shift the focalization, shift it away from your first person perspective, and try to imagine what it would be like for other people to perceive you, for other people to see you? How do you think other people see you? You know, when I think about how other people see me, there are many different people. When I think of my fiancée, I think, well, she probably looks at me with love and adoration. She probably sees me in that way. When I think about really, really good friends, I'm like, well, they probably do think about me every, now and then. When I see them, they think about me a lot. There's also those things of if a friend sends you a funny thing, think about friends sending you memes or something. They saw that meme and they thought of you. So why was it that they thought of that? Or you could also think people that you haven't seen in years probably never think about you. They probably never consider you to even really be a part of their life, to even exist within their field of perception. So you can understand yourself better by imagining how other characters, in terms of this narratological framing, how other characters in the world see you. And that can help you to better understand yourself. Then when it comes to structure, I kind of already spoke about this in terms of time. But yes, in terms of human experience, we are always going forward, or at least in our own perception of time and everything. However, we can often structure our lives in retrospect, when we sort of think to ourselves, there was our young period, there was our this period, there was our this period. When I think of myself, I'm like, there's a period that I don't remember at all when I was very young, and then I sort of separate it into certain time periods. And these, yes, often I separated according to sort of the age I was, right? I separated according to specific educational levels that I was at, right? When like primary school level and high school level, but not entirely, because there's also times in which I see myself as being in my sort of just finished school but didn't start studying yet. And as a phase, that is distinct from what came immediately before it and what came immediately after it. So it shifts and changes, and the structure of our lives can be seen in retrospect as a kind of narrative structure, and also because your mind compresses and elongates certain things. When you think back of the person that you love, the first date you had with them could have extreme significance in your mind and be stretched out as if it's something really, really important and long, even though it lasted 2 hours. That's the way that your mind works. So different things are given different levels of significance. For instance, I remember my first date with my fiancée extremely well. I remember my second date really, really well. I remember the first time she came to my place. I remember the first time I went to her place. And then I do not really remember most of the rest of the things except for bits and pieces. But would I be able to specifically localize that? No, because they form into a sort of the mesh of our early life together, our middle life together, and our late life together, and our present life together. It changes, it moves and shifts, and it becomes a different structure. So basically, how can you then see how can you actually implement a narrative understanding? So talk therapy can help, literally thinking and talking about your life and sort of thinking, where was I in different phases of my life, the different parts of this narrative that is my existence, and talking to another person, especially a therapist, which is where talk therapy actually comes from. But it could also be talking to yourself, sort of conceptualizing things and sort of saying, when did I exist in this area? When did I exist in this time period? When did I exist in this belief system that I had, etc., etc.? And also you could see journaling as a good way. Literally writing like every day, not necessarily, well, I do it every day, but writing like a journal entry about yourself, talking about yourself and exploring yourself, your life. And then what really is really fascinating about journaling is that when you've been journaling long enough, you can go back. So for instance, I think I started journaling in 2015. I can go back to 2015 and read the thoughts that I had and how distinct they are from what I have now. That person's life was completely different. Their story was different to my story, which I have now. We are the same person. Me from 10 years ago is still me, but it's also not me. That's 10 years ago me. Yesterday me is different to today me. We are constantly changing, and our story is changing. This also goes into autobiographical writing, which will be more condensed form of like journaling. So obviously journaling is like every single day or whatever you're writing about your life. Autobiographical writing is more like choosing the parts of your life that are narrative worthy, that you feel are narrative worthy, and then like writing your autobiography. Which, like, I don't think you need to have had an extraordinary life to have an autobiography. I think if more people wrote autobiographies, we'd have a better understanding of people's inner lives. Like, and also this isn't like rich people, famous people, whatever, just regular people. If you just wrote about your life, it would be better and easier to understand other people over time. So, like, why do I think the importance of this narrative representations, why is it like helpful? So basically, you can better see yourself, right? You can better understand who you are through this kind of narrative healing, through this sort of thing. You know, experiencing your life as a story, and basically wrestling with the things that you've struggled with and helping yourself to heal. You can also understand the other. You can understand other people, and by seeing them this way. Now, I did this in honors, this particular thing in honors, this narrative healing thing, which I think was just called like narrative as healing, where it was talking about things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and specifically the work of Pumla Gobodo-Madikizela, which was a she was part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She was like one of the judge people, and she also then interviewed the prime evil, whose name I keep forgetting. She interviewed him and sort of spoke to him. A book called was it A Man Died That Night? And it's sort of how this person he was a person that made people disappear during like apartheid. He tortured people, but it seemed that by talking to him and having him actually talk about this, he started to realize what he had done by actually talking about his life, by seeing it as a story. He started to be like, oh wow, this is actually what I did to people, and he became more remorseful, or at least according to, you know, this kind of stuff. So it can be a very useful way of conceptualizing ourselves and others, and a way to heal ourselves by seeing our lives as a story. But as I said at the beginning, don't see this as some like objective measurement or something. It is just a way to conceptualize something, which can be helpful. So yeah, I'm going to end it here. Hopefully this has been like not necessarily helpful for anything, but hopefully it's been, you know, something to think about. I think it's interesting, even if it's not like something scientific or something. I think it is interesting way of conceptualizing things. So yeah, hopefully you liked it. And if you did, and if you want to support the kind of stuff that I do, because I've made a lot of this kind of nonsense, if you like it, you can check out my books or support me on Patreon. That would be lovely. Or if you don't, or like if you don't want to, or if you can't, you could also do things like, comment, and subscribe to videos. Those are all very helpful. So yeah, I'm going to end things there, and I hope you have a great day, week, and month ahead, and maybe try to think about what it's like to, you know, see your life as a story. Yeah. Bye.